Hi there, this is Callan Bentley. Welcome back for another pre-lab video. This week in lab, you're going to be taking a look at two different kinds of landscapes. Those that are dominated by desert processes and those that are dominated by glacial processes. So let's start with the deserts. Deserts occur all around the world on every continent in one of two situations, either where air is sinking around the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, or in deep continental interior situations where essentially surrounding mountains wring all the moisture out of the air and leave the continental interior in a rain shadow. That's certainly the case in North America. In the western United States, we have 4 major desert regions, and we're going to go and take a look at the sorts of processes that dominate over here in this region. This region is known as the Basin and Range Province, and this is a region where the North American continent has been stretched in an east-west direction, resulting in a series of north-south oriented faults, and the blocks of rock defined by those faults have moved relative to their neighbors. So you end up seeing that these faults are normal faults, where the upper block has slid down relative to the lower block. That breaks the landscape up into a series of ranges separated by basins. And you can see that there is some erosion tearing down the mountains and making sediment, carrying it downhill and dumping it in the bottom of the valleys. It first builds up in these piles called alluvial fans, and then over time those alluvial fans can coalesce and make a continuous apron of sediment known as a bajada. If the process plays out for a long enough period of time, there's very little of the mountains that are left, just little isolated nubbins that poke up above the sea of sediment that's all around them, and those are known as inselbergs. So when you look at this picture of Death Valley in California, USA, you can see here's a range on the right, a range on the left, there's a basin here in the middle, and you even have little isolated blocks of rock poking up in the middle of that basin. These could be inselbergs. Let's now turn our attention to the mountains. One thing you'll often notice when you go up into the mountains is it gets colder the higher you go, and this means that mountains are a really nice place to accumulate lots of snow, which can pack itself into glacial ice and totally transform the landscape into a dramatic looking landscape like you see here. The way this works is you start off with a V-shaped valley that accumulates lots of snow. That snow packs together to make glacial ice. That glacier could have tributary glaciers that flow into it, and then over time it carves the landscape into this distinctive series of landforms that remain even after the glacial ice melts away. These include features like a horn, also cirques, which are amphitheater-like heads to the different tributary valleys. You could have little lakes at the bottom of a cirque. These lakes are called tarns. Or you could have a chain of lakes all connected together along the bottom of a common valley. Those are known as pater-noster lakes. Finally, we've got the hanging valleys that abruptly terminate in the air up above the main glacial trough. They're often marked by the sight of tremendous waterfalls. So let's take a look at a few quick examples here. Here's a hanging valley. You can see the waterfall coming out the bottom. This is in Yosemite National Park in California. Here's an example of a cirque. You can see that beautiful U-shaped valley there with that amphitheater-like head wall. And then up at the top you see an arête. An arête is where one glacial valley intersects its neighbor, so the two intersecting U-shaped valleys make a sharp little point of land in between, and that is known as the arête. We get another series of landforms where glaciers melt. There they dump all the sediment that they picked up from eroding the upstream regions, and they dump it in the form of a glacial sediment known as till. Individual particles of till are cobbles and boulders that have a distinct faceted appearance, and they're very scratched, quite different from something you might find in a stream. Where meltwater sorts the till, you can end up getting another kind of material called stratified drift, and that's basically just a better sorted pile of sediment. Here are some of the different features you'll find where glaciers melt. Up at the top you see a drumlin, an elliptical hill of till. At the bottom you've got a kettle lake. That's where a block of ice gets buried in the till, and then when the ice melts away, you're left with a hole in the ground. We also have examples of things like kames and eskers. These are produced where you have little pockets of water that concentrate sediment in the event of a kame, and then with the esker, it's actually meltwater flowing through the bottom of the glacier. So that's made out of stratified drift. So whether you're going dry or whether you're going cold, you're going to get to see several different kinds of landscapes today that you may not be already familiar with. I encourage you to have fun exploring them. Talk to you next week.